Thank you, Joanne. Are we all good to go? Friends, fellow citizens, amis et concitoyens et concitoyennes à travers le pays, with artificial intelligence, we face a turning point in human history and a tsunami of change in all of our lives. Whether you're just tuning in for the issue for the first time, whether you've been following it for years, whether you're a parent concerned about your job or your kid's future, or a student trying to figure out what to study, whether you're an artist concerned about your likeness being used, or an Uber driver watching the arrival of self-driving cars, or simply someone worried about scams or not being able to trust what you read and what you see anymore, the impacts of AI are real and will only continue to grow. Quelle que soit votre perspective, l'ampleur de l'enjeu n'est pas en question. My own journey started when I came across the issue in 2015. As an engineer by training with a passion for politics, the potential scale of AI as a public issue caught my eye. I spent the following years researching, writing, and speaking on the issue before moving to Ottawa to get involved in policy and advocacy. When I found out there was no existing organizations in Canada that were aware of where AI was headed, I helped found AI Governance and Safety Canada. And AIGS is now Canada's leading civil society voice on advanced AI and a growing community of people interested in technical safety and policy advocacy. Full disclosure, politically, I'm a mix. I grew up conservative, got concerned about climate and campaigned as a Green, then left politics 10 years ago and have been an independent since. Du point de vue culturel, je suis un mélange aussi, un Ouest canadien qui a vécu 17 ans au Québec et en France et qui travaille depuis 10 ans en Ontario. I share this to make clear that I don't approach AI with a partisan or cultural axe to grind and to signal that this coalition is meant for everyone. Cette coalition est conçue pour tous. And that's important because AI is on track to become everyone's challenge. For the first 50 years of its development, it was just a curiosity with a few practical applications. Deep Blue may have beaten Garry Kasparov in 1997, but it wasn't until Siri and machine learning breakthroughs in the 2010s that we really started to see AI's potential. Things like facial recognition to unlock your phone, algorithms to recommend movies for you on Netflix, or to balance drones or power Google Translate. This is also when the first issues started to appear. When algorithms are used to decide on whether to grant someone a mortgage, permit bail, or hire an employee, it really matters that they're set up correctly. And many of them weren't, causing serious impacts in people's lives. Then the 2020s arrived, with large multi-purpose chatbots like ChatGPT capturing our attention and almost instantly becoming part of our daily lives. This new wave, dubbed generative AI, also brought image, voice, and video generators like Midjourney and Sora, and software writing tools like Copilot. That's when the talk of disruption and risk really started to kick in. If you're a voiceover actor and your career and passion has been dubbing movies into other languages, now AI can not only do the dubbing faster and cheaper, but can make it sound like the original actor's voice and change the lips on the screen to match it. In that situation, that's a career-ending development. The same if you're a customer care agent who is now competing against endlessly patient and all-knowing chatbots. Sure, AI is still making mistakes and will too for a while, sometimes embarrassing mistakes, but humans make mistakes too. And AI is almost free and getting better by the day. And it's not just the workplace getting disrupted. If you're reading social media, you see posts shared by a friend, how do you know it's real? And if your elderly parents receive a phone call from an AI-generated voice that sounds just like you, how are they going to know it's not you? And what does it mean for democracy if AI can be used to persuade people and change their voting preferences? We don't know yet. But what we do know is that looking forward, we face a basic reality. With human intelligence staying the same and AI getting better by the day, we're heading into a world in which AI outperforms us in all domains. That includes things like reasoning, caring for people, navigating real-world complexity, areas where we currently have a clear advantage. The same dynamic is true for robotics. They are slower to develop than AI, but they too are getting better by the day. And for anyone who's been paying attention to them, they're having their own ChatGPT moment and are now able to navigate complex terrain and respond intelligently to voice instructions. Building human-level AI in robotics is the explicit goal of most leading tech companies, including Google and OpenAI. What this means is that we are entering a world where essentially everything we do as humans can be done better, faster, cheaper by machines. The implications are simply massive, but for today, I'll focus on two areas: jobs and safety. Jobs. We often get asked questions like, can AI really take my job, or won't new jobs get created as old ones get replaced? And the answer depends on what AI you're talking about. Today's AI is still toddler AI. Could a 4-year-old take your job? No. A teenager? Probably not, or maybe if the stakes are low. How about a late career expert in your field who can make 1,000 copies of itself and work around the clock almost for free? That's the level of AI that'll probably replace jobs. We're already entering the era of teenager AI, and the expert level is just a matter of time. What about jobs that require a human for legal purposes, such as lawyers or doctors or politicians? They may still remain, but they will increasingly become ceremonial. The human's role in that situation will increasingly become about doing what the AI tells them to do, and or simply standing to the side and watching the AI do the work. Take the example of politicians. AI will not only write better speeches than them, draft more thoughtful legislation, develop smarter political strategies. It will also be able to generate their likeness and have video calls with every one of their 100,000 constituents at a time of their choosing for as long as they want, compiling all of the voter feedback into a recommended voting agenda. Even for the in-person glad-handing aspects of politics, AI will be advising who to meet with and what to say. I could go on, but the point is clear. While we'll still have politicians, the show will be run by AI, because the politicians who try to make their own decisions will get outcompeted. Now, I do want to point out that amidst all this potential darkness, a post-work world with smarter government and cheap goods and services could actually be a much better place than we currently have. The story about AI is not necessarily a dark one. We are perfectly capable of filling our days with other things than a 9-to-5 job. Personal growth, community, accomplishment, relationships, recognition, these are all possible without a paycheck. But I hope you'll agree with me that we're headed into one heck of a transition, and we're going to need to think all of this through if we don't want anyone to get left behind. Moreover, when it comes to navigating disruption, jobs are the only part of the challenge, Everything from education, such as how kids learn and what they learn for, to healthcare, to romantic relationships, to whether loved ones who pass away should live on digitally, are now question marks. These all need to be figured out. But first, we need to talk about safety. There are already a number of concerning examples of AI accidents, such as self-driving cars crashing, and of weaponization, such as AI being used in cyber attacks, or AI-powered drones hunting down human soldiers like large mosquitoes in Ukraine. But as with everything else about AI, the bigger story is what's coming. In particular, how do you make sure smarter than human AI is kept safe? The basic challenge is this. If you build a system that is smarter than you, and through poor design or misuse or accident, it starts doing something you don't want, you're not going to be able to stop it. It will be able to run circles around you. And especially if there's a major technical glitch causing a system to start interpreting human beings as an obstacle or a threat to achieving the goal that's been given, we're all potentially in very deep trouble. This is why leading scientists have been raising the alarm about AI being a potential extinction risk. We don't know if it'll happen, but the fact that it's a possibility means that we need to be ready and to have systems in place to reduce the risks before we reach smarter than human AI. Which brings us to the final major challenge of governing AI. How much time do we have before the biggest disruption and risks kick in? We don't know, but probably not much, because almost all the inputs to AI are following a classic exponential hockey curve. What we've seen so far is data used and created by AI going up in a straight line. Efficiency of the algorithms is also going up as an exponential. Computing power AI is going up like this. And to emphasize that fact, entire nuclear power plants are now being built to power the new compute power. Money is being invested at record rates. Talent is pouring into the field. Patents are being filed also in an exponential pattern, and the list goes on. If all of the inputs are accelerating, we should expect AI to continue to get better and better, faster and faster. And that's what we've been consistently seeing. Every time a pundit makes a prediction about how long it'll take for an AI system to perform a particular task, it is usually achieved in half the time. The last time we all lived through an exponential was January 2020 with COVID. For the longest time, COVID was just a few cases in China, and people were laughed at for calling it a pandemic. Then, oh wait, some cases in Italy, and then bam, it was a full-blown crisis where everyone was impacted. Exponentials catch people by surprise. This is why we should take seriously the statements made by many of the engineers at the forefront of AI development when they say that smarter than human AI could be developed within 1 to 3 years. Let me restate that. If we want to avoid unacceptable levels of risk and be ready for the tsunami of disruption to jobs and communities, we need to have a plan in place and solutions in place, ideally within a year. So what do we do? What can Canada even do about AI? And what can government do to protect us? Fortunately, quite a bit. Canada may be a supporting character in the global AI story, but as in any good movie, supporting characters can steal the show. And all global crises need national champions. Take a moment to imagine if we were the ones proactively developing safety solutions, convening global talks, preparing our country for the disruption, or piloting policies or public consultations that others can learn from. In practice, there are 5 broad categories of things Canada can do. And I pulled this from our white paper from AIGS Canada, Governing AI, A Plan for Canada. The first and most obvious is simply government capacity. If we want government to be able to respond in time and adequately and come up with useful solutions, we need them to have enough people in place, have those people trained, and ideally have structures in place like a full ministry of AI to be able to support the decision-making and make sure that that issue gets prioritized and that the impact of the issue is considered when working on issues like healthcare or education and all the rest. The second piece we can do, so first is government capacity. Second is global talks. As you all know, this is not a problem Canada can solve on its own. It's going to take active collaboration. If you know, United States or China race ahead and don't get involved in this, everybody's in trouble. And on that note, I do want to take a moment to address the arguments, the yeah but China argument we often hear, which has become louder now that we're seeing high-performing AI systems from China, like the recent DeepSeek model. The yeah but China argument goes something like this. If we take our time and think this through and put in measures to reduce the risks, China or another country will race ahead and leave us all behind. For that, I have breaking news. Chinese are human beings too. They're caught in the same bind we are. They also don't want to see the West race ahead and dominate them with powerful AI, but they're also terrified of building systems they may never regain control over. The yeah but China argument is a reason to go talk to them, not to stick our heads in the sand and blindly race ahead. Despite all the tensions between our countries, on AI safety and disruption, we're all in this together. The third piece that Canada can do is work on legislation. This is probably the most obvious. And there was, I guess still technically, a bill called the AI and Data Act that was going to address some of the aspects of this. Basically, legislation can do things like ban the most dangerous forms, incentivize good usage, create accountability structures so that whoever is building and using AI has accountability and the reason to use it for the right reasons. The fourth thing we can do, which is also pretty easy, is invest in solutions. We currently don't know how to make smarter than AI systems safe, and we also don't have enough governance measures, smart policies that we can use to govern AI. Both of those fields, governance and signal safety, still need a lot of help, and it's something that Canada, with its huge talent base, could play a big role in. And finally, and one that is closest to my heart, Canada can and should launch a national conversation on AI. Everyone is going to have to see their life impacted by AI, and in a democratic world, everyone should have a chance to be part of that conversation and help shape the future that AI brings. That can look like public consultations. That can look like a wide range of ways to engage people. But if we want the solution to suit Canadians need to be part of the conversation. So that's what Canada could be doing. What has the federal government's response been so far? In a nutshell, they've been very good at accelerating the technology, but haven't done anything meaningful on safety or disruption. On the acceleration side of things, they were the first country in the world Canada was the first country in the world to establish a pan-Canadian AI strategy to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in advancing the research. They also made an early attempt at an organization called the Global Partnership on AI, which is not a meaningful political organization, but more of a gathering of scientists on issues around AI ethics and AI governance. They also, to be fair, tried to ask companies to sign some voluntary commitments to make sure that as they build and develop AI and use AI, it's used in safe ways. But as you can sense from all these initial actions, none of them are sufficient or headed in the right direction. What is perhaps most exemplary is Budget 2024, where they invested $2.4 billion in AI, which sounds great as a title and could have good elements, but 95% of it went to investing in infrastructure and adoption of AI. Less than 5% went to helping impacted workers and investing in safety solutions. And the new Canadian AI Safety Institute, very glad we have it, but on a $50 million budget and with not much of a mandate, it's likely not going to save us from the worst risks. Now, lest this be seen as an attack on the current government, ignoring AI governance has been a cross-partisan issue. We've seen on, for example, in Parliament, in the last 3 years of question periods, there were a grand total of 14 questions on AI with a grand total of 141 for supply management. Bill C-27 was, in theory, supported by Liberals, but vastly underprioritized, and all the other parties found big issues with it and wanted to cancel it. So this is not, we're starting from a level cross-partisan playing field of everybody needs to do better. And this paltry response was why the Coalition for Responsible AI was launched. At AIGS Canada, we spent 2 years explaining the problem to government, developing policies outlining what they need to do to respond. If they listened to any of it, it didn't show. And we weren't the only ones being ignored. Many of Canada's top AI experts, including Turing Award winners Yoshua Bengio and Geoffrey Hinton, and hundreds of others, signed letters and made repeated appearances in the media to raise the alarm. Despite these efforts, Bill C-27, AI and Data Act, was left to die, and no meaningful safety measures have been taken. What we realized at AIGS was that policy was not enough, and that the kind of action Canadians need to protect them will require bold leadership from the top. That's why, we need to make AI a political priority. Fortunately for all of us, 'tis the season for political engagement. With the Ontario election starting tomorrow, the Liberal leadership race underway, and the federal election coming up in the spring, Canadians have a unique opportunity to shape government direction for years to come. Given the timelines on smarter than human AI, it may also be our only and best opportunity to do so. So what does success look like in these elections? At a minimum, we need to push every party and candidate to first have a plan. They should all have clear policies for how they intend to address disruption and risks facing Canadians. 2, have them commit to making AI a top priority. It's all very well to have a nice policy, but if they don't implement it in the first 3 years, or in the first 6 months ideally, it won't have much impact. So we need them to commit to making AI a top priority and acting on it as soon as they get elected. And 3, they need to engage Canadians. Meaningfully consult with their constituents to make sure that the policies they take on reflect what most Canadians want. On our end, we will be proactively reaching out to the parties and candidates before the elections so they understand the challenge and know what to include in a plan. We will then also dial up the public pressure through partnerships, media, and polling to show them that it's in their political interest to do so and that Canadians have their back. We're starting from a strong position. Surveys of Canadians already show widespread concern about impacts on jobs and long-term safety. And through this work, and with the help of the already growing coverage on AI, our goal is to make AI a top election issue this year. Will we face headwinds? Certainly. In particular, we need to proactively work with AI companies and researchers who will be most impacted by any government action. If this describes you, our message to you is this: you're our fellow human beings, work with us. Your job, your kids' future, your safety is at stake too. Your company will eventually be forced by competitive pressures to replace you as well. If you're concerned about heavy-handed or poorly designed regulations, or of an ill-informed government making the situation worse, then let's talk. If there are areas of disagreement about how to solve our shared challenges, that's okay. It's that kind of dynamic collaboration that often leads to the best solutions. This coalition is meant for you too. My friends, we face overwhelming odds with AI. The disruption we're already feeling to our jobs, our education, our democracy, and our way of life is just the early phase of a tsunami of change coming our way. The safety risks we face from weaponization or major accidents are about to get really, really serious. And the acceleration in AI development means that we could be facing systems that can outperform us at everything very soon. If we want to avoid unacceptable levels of risk and be ready for the tsunami of disruption to jobs and communities, We need to have a plan and solutions in place, ideally within a year. To take a hockey analogy, we're down 3 goals headed into the third period, and most of the team isn't even aware of this game on yet. But that also means that there's great untapped potential. If we can wake our Team Canada up, not just our politicians, but all of our institutions, our businesses, our universities, our unions, our religious organizations, our diplomats, and many, many more, we have a chance. The coalition is here as a rallying point and willing partner for anyone who wants to see this happen. But we can't do it without you. Pulling this off will require a Herculean effort and a lot of resources, and we're starting from almost zero. Right now, we especially need donors, but we also need staff, volunteers, media coverage, people to amplify our message, people to introduce us to your networks and organizations, you name it. If you can see an area you can help with, we want to hear from you. Let's face it, facing the tsunami of AI impacts and risks we face and not turning away takes courage. But my friends, if like us, you also refuse to get overwhelmed, if you look at our shared challenges not as a reason for despair, but as an opportunity to stand taller than we ever have before, and if you want to be part of a community of people from across the country who feel the same way you do, this coalition is for you. Thank you. Merci à tous. I look forward to our journey together. Any questions from the audience or from the live stream? Okay. Everyone's digesting. Hopefully it wasn't too intense. I mean, it is not the lightest of topics, but I guess, yeah, the more it matters, the more meaningful it can be too. So, yes, questions, yeah. The most hopeful interaction I've had with government so far. I would say this. So I went to a number of political conferences over the last few years to basically be in the know of what people are talking about. And the first conferences I went to were in 2023, in the spring 20. And when I went there, almost no one was talking about AI. No one was even aware it was an issue. When I went back last year in 2024, suddenly everyone was talking about it. It's still early game. It's still a very earlier stage. But just the fact that in the last, like when we founded AIGS in 2022, mentioning something like AGI, artificial general intelligence, which is a code word for smarter than human AI, you'd be looked at like you're crazy. Now everybody understands what AGI is, or at least those who are working on it directly. And I think the speed at which we can respond when we finally realize we do need to respond, that gives me hope. Question, yeah. Great question. How other governments are reacting so far? Hit and miss. I guess the best news story comes from the UK. Back in 2023, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak apparently was caught on early on to especially the safety risks of AI, and told his team do whatever it takes to deal with this. And from that came the AI Safety Summit in 2023. They launched the UK AI Safety Institute, which is far more robust and proactive than our Canadian one. And they've generally been very, very positive on that. I think since the recent election, they've continued that in that vein. The EU, to its credit, put forward a fairly comprehensive EU AI Act. Certainly has its flaws. Certainly isn't on its own isn't going to save humanity, but it is an essential piece, and hopefully can be improved upon over the years. China has its own number of regulations on, for example, on data quality and on chatbot usage. They're obviously monitoring this as well, and they're not too far behind other countries. I mean, to be fair, a lot of countries don't have much of an AI industry in them. So for large parts of the world, they're mostly just monitoring what's going on in the West and in China. But that said, if you look at the number of pieces of legislation being proposed, it's at this point almost every continent and almost every country has something going on, and it's very messy. But they're also their governments are trying to move as fast as they can. Of course, Parliament and government is designed to go slowly and provide stability, not to respond quickly to this kind of situation. So it is a very big challenge. But I'll say the answer is a lot going on. None of it enough yet, but some hope for the future. Sure, yeah.
What is the easiest way for members of the community to help the coalition pursue their goals?
So I mean, if you're in a position to donate, that'd be the most impactful. But actually, also like volunteering, and if you have, like, for example, if you're a member of an organization or a community that you think would want to hear this message, please connect us. I mean, this is really, the coalition is meant as a broad group to anybody who's concerned or interested in AI should be able to join or work with at least. So yeah, so that yeah, they're on our site, there are a bunch of opportunities to volunteer and amplify our social media and that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Local meetup.
Yes, and local meetup groups. Yes, thank you, John. So we have, so this event is live with Montreal and Toronto watching us, and there's a Vancouver event coming up shortly later this evening. So we have AIGS community, which is now expanding to include the broader coalition community. We already have local meetups in 4 cities and more to come. If you want to meet like-minded people and learn more about AI, check out our website, yeah, there'll be. You'll see, and if you don't see an event in your city, help us organize one. That's the best way to get involved. Yes. yeah.
Can you expand on Canada's role in the U.S.-China race dynamics? Canada does not seem to be respected too much by the U.S.
That is a very good point, and it's one of the many uphill battles we face. I think, look, the advantage of Canada is not only we have a good reputation around the world, but we are non-threatening third party. And I don't think, like, if we were to be chatting with, even if it's at lower levels to start, with both countries, I think there's a lot we can do that we haven't been doing yet. And I'm keenly aware that Canada has its own problems with China in terms of foreign policy and foreign election interference. And I'm sure there are a lot of things that China doesn't like about Canada. But it's one of these situations where we don't have a choice but to suck it up and work with them, and they don't have a choice but to suck it up and work with us. And I know, well, the American administration currently is very taking an aggressive stance in Canada. They also have people like Elon Musk who are very keenly aware of AI safety, and there are creative ways to have impact and have influence. And certainly, I mean, the basic line is we have no choice but to try. So.
Things that you were talking about was making this an election issue with the elections that you're having. How are you, or what is your strategy for doing so, especially when there's so many other issues that are top of mind right now? Healthcare. How are you planning on doing that?
That is a very good question. Basically, well, first, I mean, the most obvious is all these other issues: cost of living, healthcare, education. They're all impacted by AI. They're all going to be. And so part of our work is going to be to talk to all these organizations and realize, hey, if you care about healthcare, you got to care about AI because it's going to change everything that you currently know. So that is, we're also working from a position where polls do show a lot of support for and concern around AI risks. And we're also going to get a lot of help from just events in the space itself. There's already increasing number of accidents, increasing number of incidents. There is rumored to be a Manhattan project to build smart human AI by the US. I think when people start to realize the scale of the issue and how whatever it is they care about now is going to be turned on its head by AI, I think that has a real opportunity to explode in terms of I think AI is political dynamite.
Is there a tentative estimate of when we might see the first set of public awareness raising events like seminars, town halls, and debates?
So this is all in development. We will be, obviously, this will be active local meetups to start. Our strategy, because we are volunteer-based and cash-strapped, our strategy is a megaphone strategy. So we're mostly focused on media and on large audiences. Actually, on that note, if you know an influencer or if you have a favorite show that you always watch or listen to, please write to them and tell them you want them to talk about AI, because that is a good way to get us and our message and the AI concern to the broader public in a very, very fast way. So yeah, basically, yeah. So yeah, and the on the back end, yes, the events and places for people to join and get involved, that'll definitely be volunteer led, but lots of opportunity for growth there as well. So
there's a lot of
yeah.
Just to help those online, can you try to repeat the question?
Oh yes, of course, yeah. So that last question was about blank.
What will raise awareness?
What will raise awareness? Yeah, and then so we hence the megaphone strategy and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
What can we expect in terms of AI in the upcoming federal election? Will it be a main part of the
Well, if we're successful, I mean, yeah, it really does have to be a top election priority. And I do think, I mean, there again, if the challenge is it is such a new issue for a lot of people, especially for politicians who have 1,000 things on their mind and 1,000 other. The challenge is getting them to understand the stakes early enough and fast enough. And like I mentioned, I mean, as long as the odds may seem, this is also, I mean, these elections coming up are probably the single biggest point of impact we can have as citizens. And so, like, if anyone's going to get involved, now's the time. Yeah. So the question.
The whole point of the coalition is to get the public more involved. You spoke about how there's been a delay in public interest. What do you think is the cause of that? Why do you think the average person is not talking about AI?
Yes. So the question is about why is the average person not talking as much about AI and how to make it a public issue? Partly because people are busy and there's 1,000 things going on. What gives me hope, and the reason I think AI will become a very big political issue, is when you start seeing major impacts on jobs or major accidents or major. I mean, it's easy to ignore AI if you're busy and you have kids and all that kind of stuff. But if you're seeing your kid's education be turned on its head, or if your job gets taken away, or if you're seeing your community be rapidly impacted, all of this is like very direct, hitting, traumatizing pocketbook stuff. And that's, I think, I'm hoping we can wake up Team Canada before that happens. But that will certainly be, at some point, this is going to explode. And the earlier we can preempt that and help people realize what's coming so they can prepare it, so we can be prepared, that's your better path forward. Yeah.
So one quick follow-up.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
With that being said, do you think there's going to be a catalyst event that shakes people up? Or
I think
slow series of events?
From what I've seen so far, just, I mean, historical patterns, it usually is it'll simmer, then explode, then simmer, then explode. And so we saw that with AI, where for many years it was getting really, really good. Then ChatGPT came out, and like, bam, okay. And I think, I mean, today or yesterday, there's a DeepSeek model that came out, which caught a lot of people by attention and dropped some stocks and that kind of stuff. I think we're going to see probably some tipping points. And once it does reach that, when it does reach the big tipping point, that's when I think there's no turning back. So yeah.
How will you promote a ministry of AI to get funding when the majority of the public is not aware of the potential dangers of AI?
Well, so this is the challenge with Coalition, is to really make it. So the question was, how do we get a ministry of AI in place if the public isn't even aware of the issues? And I think, well, two things. One, government is slightly more aware than the public about AI, and they're catching up. They still have a long way to go, but they are certainly the ones whose job it is to work on the AI file are catching up. And I think, I mean, and also a ministry of AI is actually, from what I've been told, relatively simple to do in terms of a government can announce the formation of a new ministry and just move people around relatively quickly without any major new legislation. So that is, and a prime minister can appoint a minister of AI basically on a whim. So that is relatively fast and quick, and that's probably the most, the easiest big win that government can do. Any party would make sense to have a ministry of AI. So yeah. Yep.
It's said that it is not AI, but a person using AI can take a job. Any thoughts or initiatives to help educate people on the power of AI and how to use it for personal productivity?
Yes, so it's the user of AI, not the AI itself, that takes the job. So on that, I mean, yes, but I mean, put yourself in the role of the consumer or the user. You can get a free service that is way better, or an expensive service from a human that doesn't work as well. I mean, it's not that you don't like the person. It's just that, I mean, it's just, it's like people want free music instead of paying for it. If it's free and available, you're going to do that instead, and it's going to be hard for any company or any organization to justify paying staff, and that includes, I mean, civil servants as well. I mean, if in public, even though the civil servants' jobs are usually safer than private sector, if in the private sector everyone's losing their jobs, the political appetite for paying big salaries to civil servants to keep their jobs when AI could be doing it better. I would not want to be the clerk of the Secretary Council in that position who has to deal with the large amounts of laying off. Yeah.
Just the second part is, do you have any tips on people using AI for their personal productivity?
So using AI for personal productivity, I mean, look, AI is pretty amazing. Certainly, so It is very, very useful. I use it all the time, but you're still responsible for doing all the thinking. And so often it's easy to just ask ChatGPT the thing and not double check, is it giving you the right answer? And certainly for anything important or critical, like right now the chatbots are a useful resource. They're becoming better at agents and doing stuff in the real world for us, but ultimately it's still on the user to think everything through, and that's the easy part to forget. Yes, sir.
So one of the things that I think people don't think about a lot is the environmental impact, the energy costs of AI. So to your point on productivity and personal productivity, every single ChatGPT search costs something pretty high energy cost.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, more probably anyways, is one less water in terms of
Yeah.
cooling and things like that. It is taken from our water tables and it's fresh water. It needs to be treated. So how are you going to partner potentially with environmental groups to get you more aware of the impacts that more and more AI in our world?
Well, and going back to the idea that, I mean, everyone's issue is getting impacted by this. Certainly there are growing environmental impacts from AI. I will say, not that I want to defend AI, but to be fair to ChatGPT, watching a Netflix movie is a lot more usage of energy than running a ChatGPT search. But yes, I mean, especially if you see that exponential growth in usage is going. I mean, the U.S. is talking about growing their power supply by 20% in the next 10 years. That's like terawatts of energy. Because they're in a rush to build it, it'll probably be gas-powered plants because that's fastest to build. They are building nuclear as well, but of course, nuclear has its own environmental challenges. So yeah, definitely. I mean, if environment is your concern, AI is also a concern.
How do we make sure that we don't stifle AI innovation in Canada with too much regulation?
So yeah, the concern around stifling AI innovation in Canada with too much regulation. That is a very big, very reasonable concern and very big part of the challenge. As mentioned, I mean, this is a global and economic. Countries and companies are both under extreme pressures to race ahead, because if they don't, then the other side will build faster, better, cheaper, and Canada will go left behind. I do think most of AI development, certainly the stuff before smarter than human AI, doesn't have to be overly regulated. I mean, I think that you will want things like licensing for AI agents. If we're having models go out and take action in the real world, if something goes wrong, you do need a way to be able to track who's accountable for that system and who's responsible. Yeah, definitely regulation is for certain aspects, like banning the most dangerous systems, or making sure that terrorists don't get their hands on super powerful systems. That is, we do need some of that. And the other thing is, I mean, consumer capacity. Even if we have a law in place, is the government going to be able to understand what's going on, monitor it, and take action fast enough to do anything about it? So regulations are definitely a challenging piece. They're part of the solution, but they're not the full thing. And certainly, if one side, if Canada goes hard on regulation and the other countries don't, it's not going to do much to have an impact in terms of protecting Canadians. Yeah.
How can Canada lead the global discussion on AI when our political situation is unstable with, for example, the resignation of Justin Trudeau?
Very good question. So how can Canada lead if we don't have a prime minister? That is a legit question. I mean, fortunately, we do have a little bit more than a few months. So we have so whoever gets elected initially as the Liberal leader, then whoever gets elected in the election federally, they hopefully very quickly will have a leader. But yes, and this is also, I mean, perhaps one of the silver linings of AI is that it does force us to get our ducks in a row and to hopefully minimize any infighting. Like the scale of the issue, like as mentioned, everyone's life is going to get turned on their heads. Everyone's life is at risk from AI, and I hope if we can, when enough leaders can realize that, I think things can move very quickly.
What are your thoughts on the tier governance approach? So speak a lot about federal policy, but if you take the comparison with climate change, municipalities have immense capacity to have an impact on green projects and accessing funds. So from a coalition standpoint, an engaged citizenship, that articulated and informed, they could potentially have the impact to municipal adoption criteria of AI, right? One of my concerns is that if we learn from the climate change narrative, sometimes it created like an external being that was outside of our reach, which made people feel disempowered, and then allowed a narrative to kind of dictate who does what to support climate change. And I feel like AGI has grasped that very similar. And it's true as an intellectual capacity, however you want to frame it. What are your thoughts on that tiered government?
Oh, for sure. I mean, Canada, the joys and challenges of Canada is that we are multiple jurisdictions in one. Yeah, I mean, this is, so we are, as the coalition, we're primarily focused on federal just because we have to focus to be effective. And most of the actions that are needed, especially on the like foreign policy stuff, on the technical standards, on the, I mean, technology is typically a federal issue. There are some caveats, and we saw this with Bill C-27 and Data Act, where open source, which is non-commercial in nature, doesn't fall under federal jurisdiction, it falls under provincial. So in theory, you'd need not only the federal AI Data Act, but you also need 10 provincial legislations to make sure that open source wasn't a loophole in any rules that are set in place. Certainly, I mean, everyone is part of the solution, and like, for example, provincially, their mandate they have a big mandate over jobs, over healthcare and education. They have a big role to play as well, and we'll be challenging all of the Ontario parties to really realize, no, this is their problem too, and there again, pilot stuff that other provinces can learn from, or that the federal government can learn from, and really, be that champion that Canadians need.
I'm curious how you plan to get younger people to kind of pay attention to any initiative. I mean, even if it's a coalition or anything else that's to come. Primarily Gen Z and Alpha, who are going to be growing up in this world with AI, and I'm sure they're using it a lot, as we know. So, do you have a plan to kind of get their attention, or?
Well, the most main plan at this point is work with the already active student groups. And for example, there's Encode Justice and a few others that are actively already looking into AI. Fortunately, the youth are tuned into AI a lot more than the others. So and also there tends to be a lot of volunteering and that kind of stuff. So yeah, definitely we are actively reaching out to and working with youth organizations, and we'll be talking to campuses and making sure that, the other thing is, I mean, a lot of younger people have to decide, okay, so what should I study? And they're looking at like, okay, so 5 years from now, where is AI going to be? It's like, oh, that's where AI is going to be, or could be. So why am I studying, or what am I studying for, and that kind of stuff. And I talked to, there's someone from the University of Waterloo, one of the administrators, who was trying to figure out, how do we prepare our students for this brave new world? And I think fortunately, there's already a lot of, I'll say, there's a lot of existing interest from youth, and there's a lot of potential to really galvanize that community. So yeah.
Are there any
So are there any what?
Are there any
Yeah.
There are involved.
Yeah, so there are, I mean, Canada, we started off really being the leaders in AI in terms of fundamental research, in part because we didn't have the resources of the US. A lot of the companies and commercialization happened down south. And so most of the frontier AI companies, the ones who are most likely to build smarter than human AI before the others, they're, to my knowledge, almost all in the United States or China. We do have some major AI leaders like Cohere, or on the robotics side, Sanctuary AI. And there's probably a few hundred, possibly 1,000 or so smaller companies in Canada who are working on AI. So yeah, and they have, I mean, they're obviously key partners in this, because they're the ones building it. They have a better sense of what is safe and what is needed to keep these things safe. And yeah, it's also yes. So
So you listed some ambitious goals in your talk. Could you share a roadmap to help us understand how we achieve that?
So yes, I mean, the rough theory of change is starting with these elections, making sure that parties and candidates all have a plan and are pledged to make AI a priority, challenging them with media and polls, and putting as much pressure as we can politically on them, and partnering with larger organizations than us. All that is it's a coalition building and advocacy, fairly straightforward democracy stuff. So ideally, if that works, I mean, the plan is at least they'll be, whether it works fully or not, they'll all be at least see the interest in AI and hopefully accelerate the response to AI developments thanks to it. And then following up on that, I mean, ideally, they get to the point, the government gets to the point where they realize, oh crap, this is a big issue. Canadians want it to be a priority, and then they're turning to to experts to figure out, okay, so what do we need to do, and really work through the policy solutions. And we, as AIGS, we were working on the policy side and have been part of those among those submitting recommendations. That part of AIGS will still exist and continue to work, even if most of our focus will be on the coalition.
Strong regulations can create barriers of entry for small businesses, giving large corporations an advantage. What can AIGS and/or government do to ensure AI technology is accessible for all?
So yeah, regulations hitting small companies worse than large companies. It's absolutely true. I mean, there's a desire among certain parts to make differential regulations. So where if you're a small company, you have less regulation than others. Unfortunately, because of the nature of AI, a 4-person startup could create a system that could cause 10,000 dead. And so in that sense, you do need to have across the board safety regulations. But what government can do to compensate is provide resources to help them through with regulations. Provide a lot of the companies, startups can't afford a dedicated governance person or compliance person, or they're in such a race to survive economically that they don't have time to slow down to do all that kind of stuff. So the more government can set up systems and provide support so that you're not unduly harming the smaller tech companies, the better. There's a second part of that question, but I missed.
What can we do to ensure that AI technology is accessible for all?
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yes, yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah.
Much has been discussed about AI's role in geopolitics. How should Canada think about a strategy for its AI diplomacy and use Canada's AI expertise to enhance its influence in the international sphere?
So yeah, regarding what Canada can do basically on the diplomatic front, if I understand. Leveraging, yeah. So yeah, I mean, this is where Canada really can be the supporting character to the movie that steals the show. We have a lot of AI talent. We have a very well-respected diplomatic community. We also have as a nation, we have a ton of personal connections to a whole bunch of different countries. So we really are. I mean, in terms of being on the leader of Team Human, we're in a pretty good position to do that. And I think it takes leadership, and especially foreign policy takes leadership from the Prime Minister. If we can get that pledge from our elected leaders, whoever they end up being, that is really. That said, I mean, Global Affairs Canada and other diplomatic don't have to wait for government. I mean, they can actively right now start working with counterparts in other countries. Often already is happening, even at a ministerial level between like the Ministry of Canada and France, for example. There is a lot that. The stronger those bonds are of trust and of understanding and of communication across the board, the more we can activate them when one comes to make a big decision.
This comment says, Anita Anand has an internal AI initiative for how the government use AI. Have you heard of it, and do you have any comments?
Yes, so Anita Anand, yes, who's the Minister for the Treasury Board Secretariat, which is kind of Canada's the ministry that looks after all the other ministries within and make sure they're not wasting money. They're also in charge of implementing systems across the board. And so, yes, they did announce last spring a new strategy for Canada, for the Canadian government. It's a step in the right direction. It hasn't. We're still waiting to see what exactly it involves and what. When we participated in the consultations in August, there was still a lot of basic upskilling to help them understand like where AI was headed and like. To nudge them to think ahead beyond generative AI, because I think for their initial plan for the strategy for AI for Canada was a 2-year plan to implement generative AI, which If AI was to stop where it currently is, would be a great idea. Given that AI is taking off and that generative AI is yesterday's tech already, it does seem like a bit of a wasted opportunity. Yeah.
With the rise of AI companies overseas, like DeepSeek, how do you see this impacting Canada and Canadians directly?
Sorry, I missed like
Foreign companies like DeepSeek,
yes, yeah.
how do you see this impacting Canada and Canadians?
Yeah, well, so this is the real challenge in terms of safety. It does matter what other countries do. Even if Canada had the perfect safety mechanisms and best collaboration with industry and all the rest, if China or Russia or United States race ahead and build a system that accidentally breaks down and starts causing a lot of damage, I mean, these systems can navigate the internet, and nobody is safe. So, really, like, I know foreign policy isn't typically the biggest call to action for most Canadians, but it really is like, if we get one thing right, we got to get that right. And that I would say that and the national conversation on AI, where I think it's a bit of a segue, but one of the challenges right now for the technologists is they're building this technology, but they don't have a clear mandate or instructions from what the public wants to use it for. So the more if we can really set that example and show, okay, if smarter than human AI is on the horizon, and have this conversation, a meaningful conversation with Canadians, okay, so what kind of future do we want with that, and clarify that, then we can hand that over to technologists and say, here, build it like this. Like that's the best ideal scenario is like the world gets together, figures out what they want, and then says, here, build it like this. And so I think, yeah, they're I guess yeah, that's a segue from the other question, but yes. Yeah.
Earlier in the talk, you mentioned how potentially politicians might go to AI to be drafting policy and creating things that could change and affect all people in Canada. Concepts such as goal misgeneralization and instrumental convergence. Is there any policy plan that AIGS has come up with that would be able to counteract AI designing policy that would benefit AI?
So yeah, so the question of, are we concerned about AI drafting policy for us, and if you do essentially have the more advanced systems which can be misaligned in terms of goals, yeah, I mean it's going to be like I do think that fits into the broader category of just making sure systems are aligned to human values and are designed in a way that they don't fail. And but yeah, I mean you could have, if you had like a really smart AI system and for whatever reason it was either misused or accident happened and it started coming up with a goal that would be against the benefit of Canadians and starts drafting legislation and persuading lawmakers and voters to support it. I mean, there again, when you're up against a smarter intelligence than yourself, the odds are it'll get its way. Yeah.
Have you approached provincial governments, and how do jurisdictions overlap?
We've talked a little bit with some people in Ontario. Lots of work to be done there as well. I mean, a lot of it still is. I mean, they're starting to catch on to AI, but there's just a lot of just awareness raising and especially around the urgency of it. There's this. It would be very convenient if we had 20 or 30 years to deal with smart and human AI, and there's still a lot of people still instinctively want that to be true and act as if it's true, when instead, like if you're a responsible government and you have a 10, 20, 50% chance that you're at smarter than human AI within 1 to 3 years, that is a huge percentage rise, and you have to be ready for it. Like in emergency preparedness, like if you have like a 0.01% chance of a catastrophe that gets the millions of dollars and a team to work on it, if you're talking about something this big with that high potential of disruption and risk, it really should be like the #1 item on budgets and on the parliamentary agenda. So. Yeah.
So one of the areas where AI kind of use physical systems, right? So,
Yeah.
power plants or filtration systems. So what are your thoughts on how we can to keep that future safe from that?
Yes, so AI and critical infrastructure is this is actually one of the areas where there has been the most work on. There's still so much to be done, but the most obvious immediate impact has been cybersecurity risks. So a lot more, with AI, you can basically ask it to write you a malware that can penetrate an infrastructure system of some sort. So it really is. There's a lot of work being done on that. I would defer to the cybersecurity experts as to how much more is needed. My sense is a lot more. But there is it's probably one of the most immediate AI safety threat is the infrastructure side of things. Yeah.
How much is enough AI regulation? Where do you draw the line between no regulation and too much regulation?
So how much is enough regulation, and where to draw the line between too much and not enough? I mean, ultimately, we have to be pragmatic. If regulation will at most be one part of the solution, and we also be very pragmatic about, I mentioned before, what can government actually do? Say, I mean, and there's also the challenge of, so say we have a bill saying you have to use your developer system a certain way and have these mechanisms for oversight and check in with the government every once in a while to register your system. If government doesn't have capacity to do that, registration and monitoring, if they don't have the talent to understand what's going on and what it means, like a lot of this stuff is like PhD level work, and there's one of the big challenges is talent wars. I mean, if you're a top-notch frontier machine learning expert, you can go to the States and get paid 7 figures. Canadian government can't really do that. There may be some who are very, mission or public service driven and who will do it for lower salary, but like everywhere, everyone is scrambling for top talent in AI, and for government to compete against that, that is a big challenge. So back to regulation, I would be for regulation that we can actually accomplish and that is actually useful. I think that's the, as mentioned, there's some basic regulation like just banning systems that can kill people, or banning stuff like really, really obvious, or systems that you can't control. That should and there's some categories of like failure modes, like a system that refuses to be shut off, which like you might wonder like why would anybody build a system that would refuse to be shut off? The challenge is if you give an AI system a long-term goal, it has an inherent incentive to keep itself running until it achieves the goal. So if during that time somebody tries to turn it off, there are lots of scenarios where that AI system will not cooperate. That kind of, there's some basic rules around if you're going to build an AI system, at least avoid, the dumb stuff can be banned. There's a lot of very useful, a lot of very powerful AI systems that can be used that are well designed that, don't have that and should be allowed. So I guess to recap, practical, enforceable regulation and stuff that'll actually help. Yeah.
This commenter found my weakness, which is French, but he asks, "Are you ready for tout le monde en parle?" I'm so sorry.
Oh, yes. Oui, je suis prêt pour tout le monde en parle avec grand plaisir.
Is there a political party that has shown the most concern or interest in the issue of AI safety in governments?
A political party that has shown the most interest in AI government safety. So the good news and bad news is that they're all pretty equal. We've talked to like there are MPs on all sides that I've talked to that are aware of this. When I testified before a committee, I got the questions I got were equally interested from all parties. It wasn't a partisan issue. And the other thing is too, I mean, because this is such a broad like array of impacts. If you're a national security concern or privacy concerned or any of the the really core the issues of conservatives, you care about AI. If you care about equity and safety and making sure nobody gets left behind or environmental impacts, AI is something you care about. So it really is. I mean, the potential for this issue to be unifying and cross-partisan is really there. There will of course be hopefully healthy debates around what are the best mechanisms to solve these challenges. But I think the overall I would certainly hope, and I think there's reason to hope that it won't be political football.
Do you believe we have enough environmental resources to support the rapid development of AI? For example, AI requires a lot of fresh water, which will eventually become a scarce resource.
So do we have enough? Will the environment basically survive AI? And is it going to have too much of an impact? The dark kind of truth of the matter is that the AI will reach smarter than human levels before the environment collapses. So I think, that's why I was formerly focused on climate change. I switched to AI when I realized, sure, climate change is still a very big issue, still needs to be worked on, but like, if you have an issue that could kill, millions over decades or an issue that could kill billions over a few years, you go for the latter. That's so I think it's a dark way to answer the question, but yes, there will be environmental impacts. They do need to be addressed, and also there are high priorities.
Should our elected leaders become corrupt and choose to use AI for nefarious purposes, what could the Ministry of AI do to stop them?
Sorry, I mentioned that.
Sorry, if our leaders are, let's say they use AI for bad purposes, could a ministry stop our leaders from misusing AI?
Could a ministry stop our leaders from misusing AI? I mean, typically the ministry follows the political leaders, so it would be, I mean, the check on political leaders' misuse of AI is voters, which is why this election is, again, super important, because it may be the last election we have before we reach that level of AI. So yeah, that and I guess general public pressure and yeah, if the people at the top are start misusing AI for their own personal gain, then that will be a big challenge to overcome. I mean, they're again, even if they decide to do that, they're still in the same bind as everybody else in terms of safety, in terms of disruption. And I don't think any political leader wants to oversee a very large transition where a ton of people lose their job and nobody knows what to do. So I think there's a, if anything, the challenge will be to get them to not shy away from the challenge and to get to act versus yes. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah.
AI is enabling a lot of small companies to create solutions that compete with bigger monopolies. What guidance can the Coalition of Responsible AI provide to budding AI-enabled entrepreneurs?
Excellent. So guidance to AI startups, basically. I mean, the big thing is, stay aware of what the concerns are. Work with and proactively. The thing is like there's a lot of already decent solutions for AI governance in terms of like off the shelf model systems to avoid, for example, bias in systems, that kind of stuff. There's increasingly going to be point solutions for like how to create your MLOps system in a way that is responsible. I would say like it's hard for I mean the coalition are more on the side of the governance side, but I think for companies, I mean, yeah, just I guess the call for on our end would be please be part of the conversation. We need your expertise, and if we want to make like making sure that this is a benefits everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have a platform for sharing AI policy with other countries?
Do we have a platform for sharing AI policy with other countries? Yes. So there's the OECD AI network. So OECD being 30 or so countries, mostly Western, I understand, who are working together on sharing policies. We are, like on our end, when we developed our white paper, we actively consulted from other countries to see what's the best available cutting edge policy, and then translated that to the Canadian context. There is definitely, I mean, this is again, global problem, only global solutions, and a lot of we can certainly learn from each other in terms of what works in other countries we can apply here and vice versa. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities for collaboration. Yeah. Excellent. I'm being told this is the end of the time we have. So thanks everyone so much. And I do want to end with some shout outs to some amazing volunteers. Shout outs to Peter and Catherine and Pinar and Connor and Don for helping organize these events, and Joanne for helping making these events, lots of events possible. To EG and Preeti and Monica and dozens of volunteers setting up our systems behind the scenes. Thank you to our donors who keep us alive and fighting every day. And shout out to all of you in Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver for being part of this launch. That means a lot. Thank you. Excellent. Oh, and for those who are here, there's a pub event shortly thereafter at 3 Wessa at Sparks and Bank. We're all heading there. So.